At the beginning of the film, we're introduced to the main character, Kevin Lomax, a young, talented lawyer from Florida who has never lost a case. The secret to his success is simple. He doesn't look for the moral side of his work. To him, it's just a task to be completed as efficiently as possible. It's precisely this attitude that leads him to yet another victory when he takes on the defense of a math teacher, Mr. Geddes, who's accused of molesting a schoolgirl.
He placed his hand inside my blouse. Then his other hand went up inside my skirt. He said he was testing to see if I had any special feelings. And then I screamed.
Kevin asks for a recess and quickly walks out of the courtroom. The defendant catches up to him and asks what's going on. Kevin harshly tells him to leave him alone because he's figured it out and is 100% certain that Geddes is guilty. Kevin realizes he has to do his job and defend his client, and it gnaws at him. But after washing his face and listening to one of the reporters, he abruptly becomes cold and composed. Returning to the courtroom, Kevin proves that Barbara is lying and shows the jury the caricatures she'd been passing around at school to humiliate the teacher. According to his information, she talked her classmates into backing up her accusation against the teacher. Kevin is convinced the girl decided to get back at Mr. Geddes for keeping her after class for bad behavior. She can't hold up under the pressure and admits that she got her classmates to speak out against the teacher only because she didn't want to be the sole victim. But she was a victim.
These things did happen.
This admission decides the outcome of the hearing, and Kevin, together with his wife Mary Ann and his colleagues, heads out to celebrate another win. At the bar, a representative from the law firm, Milton, Chadwick and Waters, approaches him and says, the leadership is impressed with his work. Kevin is invited to come to New York, promised a fee too good to refuse in exchange for just one thing: help with selecting the jury for an upcoming trial. When he sees the sum written on the check, he pauses to think. Arriving in New York, Kevin unhesitatingly advises getting rid of two of the candidates. He's certain that juror number 6 is a woman with a ruined life, eager to pass judgment not for the sake of justice, but out of revenge for her own grievances. And candidate number 4 craves feeling power over the fates of others while remaining a nobody himself. Kevin's judgment turns out to be flawless, and in just 36 minutes of deliberation, the client of Milton, Chadwick, and Waters walks free. After leaving the courthouse, Kevin is followed by a mysterious man. The next day, as he escorts Kevin to a meeting with the head of the corporation, Mr. Heath explains that they handle the defense not only of private individuals and major companies, but of entire states. When he walks into the office, he notices a woman in red speaking Spanish. Soon Kevin finds himself in a windowless office, whose austere interior makes a strong impression on him. John Milton, who appears, makes it clear that he's followed Kevin's career and was especially impressed by his most recent case. According to him, the teacher's case was practically hopeless, yet Kevin managed to snatch Mr. Geddes from the hands of justice. The lawyer claims he took on the defense with a clear conscience, though Milton himself doubts the acquitted teacher's innocence. He's convinced Kevin achieved his win through more than just talent, and he suspects the lawyer has a secret. So Kevin admits that in the courthouse bathroom, there's a hole through which you can eavesdrop on the jury's deliberations. This approach doesn't earn any disapproval from the head of the corporation. On the contrary, he admires Kevin's resourcefulness and praises him for the result. In the course of the conversation, Milton learns that Kevin's mother is religious, and that Kevin himself has been familiar with faith since childhood, though he was never truly a religious man. He wants to offer him a job and hopes he'll accept the offer. The corporation covers the cost of a luxurious apartment in the same building where Milton himself lives, on the condition that Kevin accepts the company's offer. Mary Ann, awestruck by what she sees, urges her husband to accept the job, and Kevin unhesitatingly chooses this new life. The very next day, he meets the corporation's team and immediately finds himself the center of attention. To test him in action, Pam Garrity assigns Kevin the defense of Felipe Moyes, a religious fanatic accused of animal cruelty. While Kevin throws himself headlong into his work, Mary Ann, used to an active life and a job of her own, is left to furnish the apartment under the direction of Jackie Heath. Mary Ann painfully feels the change, admitting that she used to always be by her husband's side, whereas now she doesn't see him for days on end. That same evening, Kevin decides to go see the defendant to question him. He comes to his basement, where church candles are set up all around. Moyes answers that he only kills animals for sacrifice, since it's considered a religious ritual. This leaves Kevin a bit stunned. During their meeting, Moyes declares he's ready to help his lawyer, promising to put a curse on the prosecutor, Arnold Marteau, and pulls a tongue out of the refrigerator.
With this tongue we create silence.
While Kevin prepares for the trial, his wife still can't settle on a paint color because of that same designer who keeps interfering and saying the color isn't right, which leaves Mary Ann feeling drained. The next day in court, he builds his defense around the fact that Moyes runs an officially registered slaughterhouse with a religious purpose, which means it was actually the police who broke the law on freedom of religion. The prosecutor, Arnold Marteau, is suddenly struck by a violent coughing fit.
Objection!
Okay, enough.
He can't find a way to object, and yet another of the corporation's cases ends in favor of the defense. On the way out of the courtroom, John Milton personally congratulates Kevin and invites him for a walk, where he gives him a piece of advice: never stand out from the crowd. He thinks Kevin displays his confidence and success too openly, whereas true power has no need for showy swagger. As an example, he points to himself, emphasizing that you'd never guess from his appearance that he's the one running everything going on around them. When Kevin gets home, Mary Ann tells him they have to be somewhere in 15 minutes. He notices one empty room and asks what it is.
It was going to be a nursery?
As they ride the elevator, Mary Ann asks her husband not to leave her alone, but Mr. Heath insists that Kevin step away briefly on business. Milton immediately introduces himself to Mary Ann, easily winning her over, and Kevin, impressed by the appearance of his colleague in the red dress, named Christabella, tries to strike up a conversation with her. Meanwhile, Milton makes an impression on Mary Ann. He admires her beauty and advises her to change her hair to accentuate the line of her shoulders and her femininity. Milton's arrival interrupts Kevin's conversation with Christabella. The head of the corporation asks him to bring Heath and Barzoon to him, after which they're informed that construction magnate Alexander Cullen has been accused of murdering his wife, his stepson, and a maid, and Milton intends to assign the defense to Kevin. Barzoon doubts whether a newcomer can handle such a high-profile case, but Milton remains firm. And when he gets home, Kevin runs into Mary Ann's displeasure as she accuses him of leaving her alone. The next day, Mr. Cullen is against a newcomer taking on his defense, because he doesn't believe in Kevin's ability to save him from a prison sentence. But the young lawyer assures him he can handle it, and Milton backs him up, calling Kevin a born winner. The corporation director's words convince the magnate, and he sets up a meeting with Kevin for the next day. Meanwhile, Mary Ann, who now has plenty of money, changes her hairstyle and spends more and more time with Jackie, who convinces her that since she never sees her husband, she might as well allow herself to enjoy the luxury. While trying on clothes with the women, they behave very strangely, undressing in front of her, discussing their men's money. And then one of them asks Mary Ann to touch her breasts.
Feel real? Absolutely real.
Mary Ann is a bit taken aback, and then unexpectedly sees something strange. She sees a demonic grin on Jackie's face that frightens her, and she quickly leaves. Hysterical, she tells her husband everything that happened and complains of her loneliness. On top of that, she envies her sister, who is pregnant again, and Kevin, who doesn't believe his wife's story, suggests having a child to fill her life with meaning again. At that moment, a passion ignites between them that Keanu couldn't have felt even inside the Matrix.
Kevin, make love to me.
During sex, he notices his wife's face change into Christabella's, but he doesn't let on and keeps going. Later, during a conversation with Mr. Cullen, Kevin tries to reconstruct what happened. He doesn't understand why Cullen picked up the weapon, leaving his fingerprints on it, but the magnate claims he simply panicked and, describing the scene of what happened, produces a pistol. The The lawyer immediately demands he hand over the weapon because a man under investigation shouldn't be walking around with a gun. That evening, Kevin's mother comes to visit him, and in the building's lobby, she meets Milton, who makes a strange impression on her. She's so frightened that she even forgets her own name, and her son has to speak for her. They step out of the elevator, but Milton suggests going up, as if nudging her towards sin.
Let's talk tomorrow.
The next morning, Alice admits that she feels uneasy in this place, and she wants to go home, taking Mary Ann with her. But Kevin is against it, believing his wife should be by his side and that his mother is obligated to support her, since she's feeling so awful. Soon, Cullen's assistant declares that her boss didn't kill anyone, and that she's willing to testify at trial. Despite the late hour, Barzoon is at the office destroying documents. He asks Kevin, who's witnessed this, not to say anything about it to the head of the special committee. And Milton, who arrives, invites Kevin to a boxing match. On the train, he stares so intently at a passenger that he sets the man off. The guy starts provoking Milton and pulls out a knife, and Milton abruptly begins speaking Spanish.
Están en la cocina compartiendo un jumbo. Tu cama verde especial.
Kevin is surprised once again.
Invigorating. I told him that if he didn't leave us alone, you were going to kick his ass.
After the match, Kevin and Milton head to a restaurant, where the head of the corporation is once again the center of attention. He seems to know everything about everyone and exerts an inexplicable influence over those around him, especially women. One of them quickly slips under the table to comfort the boss. In the middle of the night, Mary Ann senses something is wrong, grabs a knife, and goes to check. Turning on the light, she sees a small child on the floor, and then she notices blood on her own clothes. What she sees frightens her, and she tells her husband about it, adding that she hears children crying, which Kevin doesn't notice at all, and this only heightens Mary Ann's anxiety. She admits she recently saw a doctor who told her she can't have children. Instead of supporting his wife, Kevin gets distracted by a phone call. He's too caught up in his career to notice her suffering. He's told that the magnate's wife had found out about his affairs, which, under their prenuptial agreement, could have cost him part of his assets in the event of a divorce, and this fact could be interpreted as a motive for murder. Cullen admits he really was with the secretary that night, but he doesn't want this information to become public knowledge, though Kevin insists on honesty, understanding that only the truth will help sway the jury to the defense's side. Learning of Mary Ann's problems, Milton insistently asks Kevin to drop the case and support his wife. He doesn't understand why the lawyer, seeing how badly Mary Ann is doing, didn't come to this conclusion himself. But Kevin believes that if he drops the case, he'll never forgive his wife for it. So he convinces Milton to let him finish Cullen's defense, promising to do everything he can to help Mary Ann after the trial. At the trial, Kevin takes the floor and openly tells the jury. He reminds them that Cullen's previous wives had made complaints against him, that he'd paid large fines, and that he'd been less than the best stepfather. However, Kevin stresses that none of this is grounds to consider him a murderer, since his life is what hangs in the balance. After the first session ends, Barzoon expresses his displeasure upon discovering that Kevin's name appears in the firm's charter. He doesn't understand how a newcomer ended up on the list of partners, and he warns the lawyer that he won't let himself be pushed out. Barzoon asks Kevin to relay this to Milton, threatening to cooperate with the Weaver Committee. Kevin tells John what happened, and John asks his secretary to summon Barzoon, who's out for a jog at the time. Milton explains to Kevin that it was he who raised Barzoon to his high position, turning his ambition into manageable greed. And while Kevin listens to his boss's stirring speech, Eddie Barzoon sees something that fills his soul with horror. He screams, and his screams draw Mary Ann's attention, and she witnesses two men beating Barzoon to death, their faces shifting from their human form, each time revealing the now familiar demonic grin.
Guess what? There's no one there!
Kevin, who suspects nothing of this, is talking with the magnate's assistant. Melissa claims she was with Cullen on the day of the murder, but when Kevin asks her about the intimate details of that evening, she hesitates, and he realizes Melissa isn't telling the truth. She answers him too sharply. From Christabella, Kevin learns that Barzoon was killed by two crazed drunks. But this news doesn't much interest him, since the trial lies ahead, and he's convinced Cullen killed his wife. Milton suggests he give up and finally lose. But for Kevin, that's no option. Torn by conflicting feelings, Kevin nonetheless calls Melissa to the stand, and she, despite her oath, testifies that Cullen was with her. The lawyer wins, but the victory doesn't concern him because he's been told Mary Ann is in trouble again. Kevin finds her in a church, and his wife confesses that today Milton came into their apartment and coerced her into intimacy. But Kevin doesn't believe her, since his boss was with him at the trial all day. And then, Mary Ann shows him her injured body, which prompts Kevin to place her in a hospital. She's convinced all of this is happening to them because of the blood money they took from their clients, knowing they were guilty of their crimes. At Barzoon's funeral, Kevin himself is confronted with frightening visions. He sees Cullen next to his stepdaughter, but in the next moment, Geddes, the man Kevin saved from prison, takes his place. Not understanding what's happening to him, the lawyer leaves the church. Outside, he's met by Weaver, who tries to convince him that Milton is involved in dirty dealings all over the world.
Milton Chadwick Waters is a little more than a law firm. London, Kinshasa, Karachi, arms brokering mostly. Look, Milton is into everything.
From offshore accounts and arms trafficking to smuggling banned substances and toxic waste. He asks Kevin to testify against Milton, but Kevin refuses. Then Weaver drops a piece of news that shocks him. The day before, Geddes had been arrested, and the body of a 10-year-old girl was found in his car. These words make Kevin question everything he believed in, but he doesn't have a chance to respond. In that very instant, Weaver steps out into the road and is killed under the wheels of a car, leaving Kevin alone with a truth he can no longer turn away from. After what's happened, Kevin goes to his wife and finds her in the company of his mother and Pam, who'd brought Alice to visit her daughter-in-law. It's hard for Kevin to see his wife in such a state, and his mother makes it clear she wants to tell him something important. When they step out into the hallway, his mother tells him about his father, but he doesn't want to hear her out, and so she begins to recite a prayer.
Listen to me! Heaven, behold, I send you out as sheep amidst the wolves!
Pam asks Mary Ann to look at herself in the mirror. What she sees makes her shove Pam out of the room, and she locks herself inside. Left alone, she hears an insistent whisper she can no longer resist, and walking up to the broken mirror, she takes a shard in her hand. Kevin couldn't break down the door. Only now, as the woman he loves dies in his arms, does he realize how dear she was to him and how much he lost by choosing his career over her. After Mary Ann's death, Kevin decides to hear out what his mother had been trying to tell him. She, who'd hidden the truth for many years, admits that John Milton is his father, a man she'd had a relationship with in her youth.
Somehow he found us. He tracked you down.
No.
Just forget about him. We can leave here, but we can go home.
I have to go.
Wait!
His meteoric career had been not a chain of coincidences, but part of a carefully devised plan. Milton had merely created the conditions in which Kevin, again and again, made the desired choice himself. Leaving his mother, Kevin walks out of the building and finds himself in a completely empty city. Reaching Milton's apartment, Kevin no longer doubts his true nature and sees in him the embodiment of evil. He's convinced that it was Milton who was responsible for Mary Ann's death, and Milton confirms that she hadn't lied when she spoke of their intimacy on the day of the trial. Consumed by rage, Kevin shoots his father.
Oh, yes!
But the bullet does him no harm at all. Kevin calls him Satan, and Milton calmly explains that Kevin didn't become such a gifted lawyer by chance. He's his heir. In response, Kevin blames him for his wife's death, but this only surprises Milton. He methodically demonstrates that Kevin himself drove Mary Ann to her death, when at the decisive moment, he chose the Cullen case over her. He reminds him that he'd asked Kevin to drop that case, but Kevin made a different choice, and now he's trying to shift the responsibility. John asked his son whether anyone forced him to save Geddes from prison, knowing who he really was. Whether anyone compelled him to defend Cullen and secure an acquittal. Even on the subway, Milton had offered Kevin the chance to lose the case, but Kevin refused, believing his destiny was always to win, which means Kevin was always driven not by a sense of duty or by injustice, but by vanity. The sin Milton prizes above all others. The sin Kevin chose again and again on his own, needing neither orders nor coercion. And it wasn't that he didn't love Mary Ann. He was simply too enamored with himself. For the first time, the realization comes to Kevin that Milton is right. It was precisely his drive to win that turned out to be what destroyed her. But his father asks him not to judge himself too harshly. He never made Kevin's path easier. He only created the conditions for choice. In return, now Kevin knows the truth. He has a half-sister, and the two of them are Milton's finest creations. Their union is meant to produce a perfect being, capable of remaking the entire world in its own image. His blood runs in their veins, and their child will be the embodiment of perfection. Milton emphasizes that Kevin must make this decision of his own free will. In exchange, he's ready to give him everything a mortal could ever wish for. Christabella takes the seduction into her own hands, assuring him that in a couple of minutes, Kevin will forget all about Mary Ann. For a moment he gives in, trying to lose himself in the passion. But his sister is mistaken. He still loves Mary Ann, and, suddenly pulling out a pistol, he shoots himself in the head. Milton screams, and in that same second, the space is engulfed in hellfire. Christabella crumbles to dust, and a fiery whirlwind consumes everything around them. Suddenly, Kevin finds himself in the courthouse bathroom on the very day he was defending Geddes. Not understanding what he's just been through, Kevin returns to the courtroom and kisses Mary Ann, realizing how deeply he loves her. And to the judge, who has entered, he declares that he refuses to defend Mr. Geddes. The news that a lawyer who's never lost a case couldn't withstand the pangs of his conscience could make Kevin famous across the whole country. And Larry convinces him to give an interview that would turn him into a star. Mary Ann, still not understanding anything, asks her husband to agree, and Kevin accepts the offer.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.